everyone, and welcome to a new video. Today's video is a continuation of a previous one, specifically a previous pattern haul where I shared 400 vintage patterns with you. Those came from a single estate, and those weren't even all of the patterns at the estate. Those were just the ones that were shipped to me first. In this video, I'll be hauling the remaining 200 plus patterns that took a little bit longer to get to me. But eventually they did, and I'm so glad they did because there were a lot of goodies in there from the 1920s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and so on. Just lots of great patterns in general, and I had a lot of fun going through them, and I know I'm going to have a lot of fun counting them and listing them too. But that part is going to be a little bit more time consuming, so I'm probably not going to film it. But I did film the unboxing and my first reaction and responses to all of the patterns, so let's go through that, and I really hope you enjoy. So I'm sure I filmed an intro for this, but if I didn't, welcome back to part 2 of the massive estate haul. Here I am with another 200 plus patterns. A lot of these appear to be older than the ones in the first lot, though I have seen some from the 50s and 60s. I've also seen a lot of ones from the 1930s. So I'm really excited to get through these. Once again, I have them spread out all over my table. I'm just going to be going through it one by one and sharing my thoughts on each one and showing them to you, and then organizing them. Also, my dog is currently sick. She has a problem with her eye. She's not feeling too well, so she is on a bed on my desk. So if you see a little dachshund tail appear at any point in this video, that's it. Anyway, let's just get started with what's on top here, which is a darling Hollywood pattern. I can already tell you that I'm keeping this one because it's in a size 18, so it's for a 36-inch bust and 39-inch hips, which are pretty darn close to my measurements, and I love this design. It's sort of a pinafore apron dress that has optional ruffles over the shoulder, and then there's a blouse that goes underneath it that you can make with long or short sleeves, and has a gathered neckline with binding across it instead of a collar, so that should be really easy and really fun to make, and Hollywood patterns are my favorite patterns. So that is a good way to start this video off, and a good addition to my personal stash. Here we have a butterick pattern, which is also in a size 18. There's a sticky note on it saying 1943 question mark, so I'm assuming that is when it's from. This is another one I'll be hard pressed to get rid of. It's from the early 1940s, I would guess, even without the note, just based off of the shoulder pad and the hairstyle and the overall silhouette. And it's a really cute blouse option with shearing over the shoulder, kind of an epaulette yoke piecing, and then a placket down the front with optional ruffles. And I love me some ruffles, so that one might be added to my stash as well. We'll see. Here we have a Vogue special design, probably from the late 40s, early 50s. This has a really interesting sleeve option. I'm not sure if it's going to really show up. It's kind of a petal sleeve where the undersleeve is gathered, and then it's top stitched over top of it to create this really interesting effect. It kind of mimics this effect over the hip, which is a gathered swag sheared detail. It's really pretty, just a beautiful design. It's in a size 16 for a 34-inch bust and 37-inch hips. The Vogue special design patterns do tend to be a little bit more valuable since they're a bit more rare, and I think especially this design would go for quite a bit. Here we have a later 50s design, a simplicity printed pattern in a size 13 for a 31-inch bust. You can make a jacket out of this or a dress. I really like the neckline on this dress and the way it's fitted. So it's fitted with 2 darts on either side of the front, and then the darts actually lead into a kind of flap for the pocket. Maybe then you can see it a little bit better. But it's just a really interesting, really kind of classic design for a dress with a little neat twist on it. And then you have that kind of pocket detail on the dress mimicked on the pockets of the coat as well. Here we have a simplicity pattern which has an envelope but isn't in the envelope, probably because the envelope is too damaged. Actually, never mind. It doesn't have a front of the envelope, it just has the back of the envelope. So I'm probably gonna have to measure these pieces to figure out what size this is, which is always a little bit frustrating, but it's definitely doable. And this is just for a jacket and a skirt set, and probably from the mid-1940s based on the length. Here we have a Vogue pattern. The size has worn off, which is, again, kind of annoying. I'd say that this is from the early 1940s. You've got this really nice yoke detail across the shoulders, an option for long bishop sleeves or short sleeves fitted into the sleeve head. It's only 7 pieces, so it should be pretty easy to construct, but it does feel like it might be missing pieces. The envelope doesn't feel particularly full. Here we have a pretty thick butterick pattern. I don't know if you can see, but it's about 1.5 inches thick, which is kind of impressive. This is in a size 16 for a 34-inch bust, and again, this is a jacket and a dress pattern. You can make this really nice fitted sheath dress with kind of a halter style top and a little collar, and it looks like you can either make this sleeveless or with raglan sleeves. No, just sleeveless apparently, and it's fitted with pleats in the front instead of darts, which is interesting. Here we have an advanced pattern in a size 18. This is another one that I might want to keep. There are a lot of keepers in this collection. This is another one that I'm going to be Tempted to keep. It is a later 1930s afternoon dress in a size 18 for a 36-inch bust and 39-inch hips. You've got this interesting kind of rounded yoke with shirring coming down from it that provides shape over the bust. I don't actually love this really tiny sweetheart neckline. I don't think it's particularly flattering, but I adore this version with the long sleeves and the collar and the little kind of slit down the front. I think it's so elegant, pretty. And I don't typically like advanced patterns, but this one I'm going to be hard pressed to get rid of because it is stunning. Here's a buttered pattern, probably from the 50s, just going off the branding. I find it difficult to tell the age of men's shirts patterns. They all sort of look the same to me. This feels like it might be factory folded, and it's for a 14.5-inch neck. Really don't know how well men's patterns sell, but it's in good condition, so hopefully it can go for something. Here we have a buttered pattern, probably also from the 50s. Also feels factory folded, potentially. This number is 6425 in one size, and this is for an infant's set. They call it a layette set, which I've never heard before. So I'm not sure if it's just gone out of fashion or if it's just because I know nothing about children. And it looks like this also comes with embroidery instructions and transfers, which is cute. Another kids pattern. This one says complete and cut on the bottom, and this is just for an apron, and it is printed. This is a really sweet pattern. This is actually very similar to a bright green coat I made a few years back. It's got that kind of yoke in the back and then the pleated details that flare out to a classic swing coat design. It looks like you can have this buttoned up to the collar, or you can have it with no closures or just a single button at the waist, and then it has a proper lapel that flares out. Really like that design. Don't really need a coat pattern though, so I will definitely pass it on. Feels like it has been used. It feels quite puffy, but hopefully it is complete. Another coat pattern, and this one is gorgeous. This is a buttered pattern, probably from the late 40s, early 50s, in a size 16 for a 34-inch bust. I know this would not look like this on me, but oh, I wish it would. Basically, when you're making a coat out of such a heavy coat weight material, it is not going to cinch down to look that tiny and flattering, but it's nice to imagine that it would. Let's keep on going with the coat patterns. This is an advanced pattern in a size 16 for a 34-inch bust. Looks actually very, very similar to the previous buttered pattern. It just has more of a rounded collar. Actually, I take that back. It looks like there's an option for a pointed collar as well. There are actually two patterns in here. So if we flip this over, we have a very worse for wear simplicity printed pattern from the 40s or 50s for a 28-inch waist. This is a woman's blouse pattern by Butterick from the 50s. This is a halter style pattern. I love the idea of halter tops in theory, but they're just not flattering on me. They look great on some people though. And you have 3 different color options here, and they're all really pretty stinking cute. And they look pretty simple too. There are only 6 pieces for all those different options. I promise we'll get to some of the 1930s patterns soon. They're just sort of spread out. So here we have a late 50s pattern for a sheath dress. I love this pattern so much. It looks like something Mrs. Maisel would wear, and I'm all over that. It has a really interesting V-neck detail at the front, and then you can make it either with a collared yoke or with a boat neck yoke kind of straight across. And it looks like it is fitted with darts that lead into these chevron-shaped pockets, which is of course mimicked on the yoke of the design. So I really, really like that, and it feels like it might be factory folded. Here we have another 1950s butterick pattern, this time in a size 16. The envelope is worse for wear, but it does feel full, like all the pieces might be there. And this is for a dress, which again has kind of an interesting shaped yoke that leads into these cute little sleeves. It looks like dolman sleeves actually, which is extra interesting. And then you can make this a jacket with an overlap detail at the back, which is mimicked around the collar and gathering at the back to take it in at the waist. So really nice suit pattern with some interesting details. Another butterick pattern. This one's in a size 16 for a 34-inch bust. I really, really like this design. You can make it with short sleeves with facings that flip outward, so you can have kind of a contrasting detail there. You can also make it with classic short sleeves or with long sleeves and this scalloped collar and matching scalloped cuffs. This does, however, feel quite flimsy, like all the pieces might not be there, but it's really, really cute, so I hope they're all there. Here we have a companion butterick pattern from the 1960s in excellent condition. Seriously, this envelope is in phenomenal shape given its age, and it feels factory folded. It's in a size 34 for a 34-inch bust, which is generally in line with a size 16. This has that neckline that I'm not particularly fond of and that interesting yoke over the shoulder. What I do really love is the sleeve design though. It's very unique. It's kind of a puffed balloon sleeve, and it's gathered to fit a very narrow cuff at the kind of just below the elbow. So it's a really interesting design, and it looks like it has a side button closure, which you don't usually see either. And as I said, feels just in phenomenal shape and condition. We have an advanced children's pattern here in a size 1 for a pair of overalls, and it includes a transfer pattern. I don't know if I've ever seen an advanced pattern with a transfer. That's interesting. And this feels like it might be factory folded. This also feels like it could be factory folded. This is a simplicity pattern for a girl's kind of pinafore dress, which is darling. And then you can also make a pair of bloomers. And this is probably from the late 40s, early 50s, something like that. Another pattern up here is for bloomers, and this is described as a juniors and girls panties pattern, but it's made for a 27-inch waist, so I'm assuming a woman could wear this too. This is actually really cute. Like, if this was in my size, I might actually consider keeping this for pajama bottoms, because I think they're darling. And it feels pretty empty, this envelope, but it's also not supposed to have very many pieces, so who knows. This is another buttered pattern. This one is size 16 from the 50s. You've got a square neckline and then optional sleeves with little winged cuffs. And the skirt has a pleat in the front that lines up with the darts at the front. So that's a nice way to make it cohesive. And this feels like it could be factory folded. Another kids pattern, this one's by Butterick for little boys. It's in a size 4 and you can make slacks, shorts, or a shirt out of this. And it looks like it might be factory folded in there. Here we have another companion Butterick pattern. This is in a size 15, and again, it's in really great shape. The envelope feels really sturdy, but the kind of laminated white part of it is starting to peel off and reveal the plain paper underneath. This is a darling 1930s design. It's fitted to the underbust, and then it's got a wrap style top, which is kind of gathered at the shoulder and the waist to provide volume across the bust. The back itself is fitted, and you can make it with short sleeves or long sleeves. And it's in a size 15 for a 33-inch bust, and odd sizes are junior sizes, so they tend to be cut for more of a pear-shaped figure. So for a smaller bust and then more room in the waist and the hips. Another Butterick pattern, this one is size 32, so equivalent to size 14. I really like this pattern. It's from the 1930s for 3 different versions of blouses. You can make it with short sleeves, long sleeves, and you have a different cuff option. You also have a different collar option, and you can make it with or without a placket. So a lot of different options for a relatively simple pattern with only 12 pieces. A Butterick pattern that feels like it could be factory folded, though the envelope is a little worse for wear. This is in a size 16, it is number 8097, and it's just kind of a simple classic blouse pattern. You have 4 different options with 4 different sleeve lengths, one that doesn't have sleeves at all, and then you've got a kind of typical 2-part collar lapel. A size 2 printed Butterick children's pattern. This is really, really cute. You can make a jacket or you can make this little pair of overalls that's got like a sweetheart neckline and then ruffles on the strap. It's just so cute. And it's described as being toddler's play clothes. Very, very cute. And here's another pile of patterns for us to go through, but quickly I'm just going to organize the ones that I've gone through already. So right on top here we have kind of a boring one, a Butterick pattern that feels like it might be factory folded for a size 1 girl's dress. It looks like there's a dress with little puff sleeves and then an optional overdress with a sailor style collar. This is a Butterick pattern in a size 14 from the early 40s, late 30s. With this you have kind of a dolman sleeve option, but the dolman sleeve is actually created as a raglan sleeve, so it extends all the way up to the neckline of the blouse. And then the neckline of the blouse is actually sheared to provide volume across the bust, and then it's taken in at the waist with little tucks. And it looks like you can make this button all the way down the front, or you can have this kind of slashed opening at the front that you can trim with ruffles. Really cute design, only 8 pieces too. And here you can see that kind of interestingly shaped sleeve. This is a McCall's pattern from the 30s. I would be able to tell it's from the 30s based off the styling and the font, because that was kind of iconic in the 30s, but it does also have a sticky note saying 1936, which helps. This is a coat, looks kind of similar to the other coat patterns we've seen, except this has a double-breasted option, and it also has patch pockets, and it's in a size 16. And it feels like it might all be there, but also doesn't feel like it's factory folded or anything either. This is a cute Butterick pattern. I think of Butterick having kind of generic designs, but this one's a little bit more interesting. It's got raglan sleeves and then a gathered cuff and then gathering coming down from the sleeves to provide volume over the bust. The waist is taken in with darts, which kind of mimic the seam lines of the skirt. And then there's actually ruching over the hips of the skirt as well. So there's just a lot to it. It's a very simple, sleek design, but with some details that make it unique. We have a McCall's pattern in a size 8, so this is a girl's dress, and it feels factory folded and excellent condition. It's a cute girl's dress with a straight across collar and then a little yoke. Then you can make this with either fitted sleeves or puffed sleeves. This is a girl's 2-piece dress pattern, but it's in a size 12, and that tends to have the same dimensions as a woman's size 12. So someone who's petite could get away with this, and it's just a simple rectangle skirt and then a cute blouse with gathers down the front and a puffed or a fitted sleeve option. This is a Butterick printed pattern in a size 18 for a 38-inch bust. It's described as being quick and easy, and the flap is closed, but I'm guessing this is called a house dress. Actually, it's called a duster. So for leisurely living, button front duster with back interest. And I'm assuming by back interest they mean this pleat that has an optional bow or placket detail. Here we have another Hollywood pattern that I will be highly tempted to keep because it's in my size and it is so darling. This is kind of a raglan meets dolman sleeve style blouse from the 1950s with darts shaping the front, and then you can make it with a little rounded collar or a kind of mandarin collar that ties with the bow at the front. I love this so much. This is one of my favorite blouse patterns I've ever seen, and I'm so excited that's in my size. The patterned design does look a little bit weird, given how the sleeves and the collar is cut, but I think that would be a fun one to put together and definitely a fun one to add into my wardrobe. My one wish is that it had a short sleeve option too, but I think I could easily alter to have that. Here is a pattern from the 1930s. It is a size 16. This has a really weird kind of winged sleeve detail, and it looks like it has kind of horizontal darts going across the waist too, which I've never seen before. And it's got decorative buttons, so it must close at the center front somehow, either with a zipper, which I don't think were invented yet or weren't commonly used yet, or some sort of hook and bar closure. That is an interesting one for sure. I'm curious to see that unfolded and see how it's actually supposed to go together. Then we have a worse for wear, very puffy McCall's pattern in a size 16. I actually like this pattern a lot. I don't usually keep suit patterns, but I'm tempted to keep this one just because it's such a classic silhouette. It reminds me almost of the silhouette you'd see and the design details you'd see on suits from the Edwardian era, kind of in 1915. It's also that kind of boxier silhouette you see with the 1930s while having tailoring details from the 40s as well. I think partially how it's styled is really pulling me in too, with the coordinating hats and this little kind of top hat that has a veil coming down. I like that a lot. Oh boy though, looks super complicated. I don't think I've ever seen a McCall's pattern or a vintage McCall's pattern that has 25 pieces. That's crazy. And look at all the different kind of coat options and skirt options you can make from it. We have some kids patterns here. This is a dewberry pattern from the 1930s for a little boy. It's in a size 4, and you can make this kind of sailor style set of slacks as well as a little shirt. And this size of pattern will be seen quite a lot because this is the early dewberry pattern size. So this is a normal pattern size and that is the dewberry pattern size. It's almost half the size of a more traditional envelope. Speaking of kids ones, this is a Butterick pattern for a nightgown in a size 4, and it's described as being quick and easy, and it feels factory folded. Another Butterick pattern, this one with really interesting draped kind of pleated details across the hips, which forms down to a relatively fitted back. You have a dolman or a capped sleeve option, and then also this kind of long sleeve option. The long sleeves are actually sewn onto the capped or the dolman sleeves. So that's interesting. It creates a bit of a piecing detail. This in a size 14 for a 32-inch bust. Another Butterick pattern, this one in a size 16. I like this pattern quite a lot. I don't think I would wear it, but I'm definitely fond of it. So you have a 3-tiered ruffle skirt with a little scallop detail coming down from the waist. The bodice is fitted with darts, and then you have a little kind of capped sleeve option that's scalloped as well. And that scallop detail is actually even mimicked with a little bit of a sweetheart neckline. Here we have another Butterick pattern, this one is size 4, and this is for a girl's rectangular skirt, and then also kind of a bra / crop top. So it's fitted at the front with what looks to be like lacing, and it's got rectangular straps with little ruffles coming off of them. This is another Butterick pattern. This one is so cute, again for the 1930s, and looks to be in excellent condition given its age. It's for a 30-inch bust, so it's a size 12 and it's number 1961. You can make an evening gown out of this that's floor length with these really interesting kind of sheared ruche details on the bodice and then a yoke that leads into these little sleeves. Or you can make an off-the-shoulder option that has those seam details and a shorter skirt. I personally love this option. I think that's so neat and I've never seen anything quite like it before. I'm generally really fond of off-the-shoulder bodices because they remind me of the Bertha collar bodices or necklines from the 1860s, which was one of my favorite styles of historical dress. Here's another 1930s pattern, and this one from McCall's, and this is a Junior Miss 2-piece suit dress. So you can make this jacket with either short or long sleeves, and it's got interesting details around the cuffs, and then you've also got this interesting belt you can make, and then you can also make a relatively fitted skirt. And that's what it looks like from the back. Here's a mail order pattern that feels factory folded. It's in a size 4, but it's missing its mailing envelope, so I don't know the brand. It looks like you can make a dress, a blouse, and a longer short sleeve jacket. This is another children's pattern. This is kind of similar to the bloomers pattern we saw earlier, but in a size 6. This is again a dewberry pattern, and an early one at that, so it's in a smaller envelope size. And this has a few different bloomer options, despite only being 6 pieces. Here is a New York pattern for the 1930s in a size 2. Feels like it might be factory folded. This is sort of similar to a dress we saw before, where it's kind of that pinafore style with ruffles over the shoulder. This one has triangular shaped pockets and an optional puff sleeve option as well. This is a buttock pattern from probably the late 30s, early 40s in a size 28 for 28-inch waist. And you can make a full-length version or a kind of knee-length version or a knee-length version with a pocket. So tons of varied options. A buttock pattern that has been taped across all of the edges but feels like it might be intact, and this is in a size 4 for a boy's nightshirt. This is another mail order pattern that looks to be in excellent condition. I don't see what size it is on it, but I'm sure it says somewhere, and this is for a apron and a dress, maybe? An apron and a jacket? I'm not fully sure. This shows it being open in the back, this shows it looking like a dress, this shows a jacket, so that's sort of a mystery to me. 2 more dewberry patterns, these ones from the 1940s. This one has the copyright written on it, and it says 1945, and that's just a really cute size 6 pattern. Actually very similar to some of the other pinafore dresses we've seen, ties in the back, made out of 4 pieces, so very, very simple. And then this one is kind of a gored puffed sleeve dress pattern in a size 1. And it says easily made, and it only has 7 pieces. Here we have a buttock pattern that feels factory folded, and this in a size 14 for a 32-inch bust. The illustration on this one is really weird. This lady doesn't have a nose. I don't know what was up with the artist on this day, but they just totally forgot to give this lady a nose. I'm kind of tempted to just draw a little nose on her, but that would ruin the integrity of the envelope, so I won't, but I'm highly, highly tempted. This is a 1940s pattern for a suit. It's got this interesting kind of seam at the waist that extends into a dart, or maybe even a seam, it's hard to tell. And then it looks like this bottom portion actually wraps around the entire hem of the jacket. Then you've got a simple kind of circular gored skirt, and it's described as being a 2-piece suit dress and dicky. More patterns, and right on top here we have some more kids ones. This is a New York pattern in a size 4, probably from the late 40s, early 50s. You can make a little set of shorts or this jacket, and it looks like they have a boys version with kind of a more traditional collar and pouch pockets, and then a girls version with heart-shaped pockets. Another New York pattern, this one is probably from the 30s or early 40s, you can tell by the different font. It's in a size 1 for a little romper overall thing. This one's in a size 2, also New York pattern, for a girl's dress with either a sweetheart neckline puff sleeves or a filled in kind of fitted yoke with a collar and puff sleeves. It's actually very similar to that last one, both in terms of design and different view options, and size. It's a size 2 as well. But for this one, you have a square neckline instead of a rounded one. This is a pictorial review pattern from the 1920s. This is in a size 2, and you can make a pair of bloomers or a shirt slash smock thing with a yoke that turns outward, both at the collar and the sleeves, to create some interesting design details. Another early dewberry pattern, it was only 10 cents. So this is probably from the 30s, and it's described as having illustrated instructions for cutting and sewing, which is probably pretty new to them at the time. And this is in a size infant, so you can make a few different dress options. Here's a dewberry pattern which feels empty, like I think this is literally just the envelope, which is pretty much worthless, but this is in a size 14 for a 32-inch bust, and I'll probably just put this in a pile of ones that I'm planning on selling for like arts and crafts, because I do have a little pile of empty envelopes, which is unfortunate because this would be a fun one to make. I really like the way it is fitted underneath the bust. It's very interesting, but alas, no pieces. Another 1930s dewberry pattern, this one in a size 8 for a pair of overalls, and I like how they differentiate between the boys and the girls' overalls by changing the color of fabric used. Another kids dewberry pattern, this one is size 12, so it could actually work for a petite woman as well. And this is a more classic 1930s design with a gored skirt and a fitted bodice and a square neckline and a little scalloped button detail. Here we have a Mary Allen ink pattern, which I've never seen before. It looks very similar to pictorial review patterns I've used from this time period. This is for a 1920s dress. Here's an American Weekly pattern in a size 2 for a little pinafore and blouse with either long or short sleeves. I'm kind of curious what's in here, so I'll pull it out in a sec. But this is a 1920s pattern for a child apron. The illustration on this one's a little scary. I don't know if that's scary to anyone else, but it's made for someone of 6 years, and this is a pictorial review pattern. And let's see what the receipt says. And it looks like this one was purchased in 2002 off of eBay. Here we have some more 1920s patterns. This one is a buttock pattern for a 6-year-old with a 24-inch bust. And this is a double-breasted design that would open at the front with a full skirt and a kind of almost sailor style, very wide collar. Here we have a children's hat pattern, which I've never seen before. This is by Butterick, and it's labeled as being from 1919. And it's for a hat size 6, so a head measurement of 19.5 inches. I wonder what that'd be worth. I've, as I said, never seen anything quite like it before. It's another 1920s children's pattern. It's in a size 4 for a 33-inch for a 23-inch bust. Has a few different options. It's just described as being a little girl's dress with a straight skirt. So this is a Dewberry pattern set of instructions in tissue, which looks very reminiscent to the slip pattern I saw earlier. So let's see if I can dig that out and if they go together. Okay, this described as being 5432, whereas this described as being 5439, and here it says 5439. So these definitely go together. So hopefully that is actually complete and can be sold and used. Here we have a set of butterick transfers from the 1920s, or earlier I guess. Here's another pictorial review kids pattern, this time in a size 6. This is a very, very simple dress pattern. Another butterick pattern from the 1920s for a size 4. This is a little girl's frock. It again comes with an embroidery transfer, and it feels to be in very good condition, and you can make bloomers or a dress or both. Another butterick children's pattern from the 1920s, this one in a size 8 for a 25-inch bust. Here's a butterick pattern from the 1930s, the early 1930s it looks like. If this was in my size, I would totally keep this, but it's not, so I'm selling it. But I adore this version. I think that kind of double-breasted look at the front with the bow and then the puffed sleeves and the fitted skirt, it is so darling. And then you have this evening dress version as well that looks like it opens at the back. So you've got 17 pieces and it feels like it might be factory folded, which would be awesome. And based on the fact that this isn't laminated, I'm guessing that's even earlier than some of the other butterick 1930s patterns we've seen so far. So once again, I have to do a little bit of tidying and then I'll be back to carry on going through these. So right on top here, we have some more companion butterick kids patterns. This one's in great shape, feels factory folded, has little smocking details, and is for a 1-year-old. This one's for a 6-year-old. Both of these are from the 1930s. This one is in a size 6, and this envelope feels very flimsy. So I'd not be surprised if it's missing pieces, which is unfortunate because it's a really cute puff sleeve dress design with bloomers as well. Here we have a very, very creepy butterick clown costume. Like, I don't like that at all. I don't even want to sell that because I don't want to look at it anymore. I don't like that. Here we have a very cute 1950s/60s butterick pattern for a 6-month-old, and it looks like you can make a few different dresses, a smock, and a few different bloomers too. Another 1960s design. This one is for a 26-inch waist. It's number 9779, and you have 3 different pants options you can make. And going back to the 1920s, this is a child's ensemble for a 2-year-old, and you can make this pair of pants that have so many buttons. Like seriously, imagine trying to get a child into that. And then you can also make this really darling coat. This is a 1920s coat pattern for a 40-inch bust, and it's a ladies pattern, and you have a few different options here in terms of collars as well as different fit methods for the back. It looks like you can make it without darts, you can make it with exterior darts or interior darts, so lots of different ideas. More kids patterns. This is a Dewberry kids pattern from the 1940s for a pair of overalls and a blouse/smock. This one I love in my size, like seriously so much. You can make a pair of slacks, you could make this shirt, or you can make a pair of suspender shorts. More kids. This one by McCall's from the 30s, late 30s, early 40s in a size 3. It's a child's dress and panties. This I thought was a ladies pattern, but actually says size 8 on it, so it's for a 25-inch chest. It's described as being a bathrobe or wrapper with slightly deep armhole with or without collar, hood, cuff, pocket, and slipper. So you can make slippers from this too, which is kind of crazy. Lots of different ideas there, though I'm not sure how in demand a pattern like this would be. We have another Vogue coat pattern, this one in a size medium. This is very similar to a coat pattern I followed on this channel before. It is Vogue 6570. It's just a very classic 1950s, not quite swing coat, but getting close to it. Speaking of 1950s, here's a butterick pattern. The envelope is worse for wear, but it feels like it might be complete. It feels quite sturdy in there. And this is for a skirt and then either long sleeve or short sleeve jacket. I really like this design. I think it's super cute with the shawl collar option that comes in a bow, or also the bow option with the more traditional collar/lapel. I love the styling too with the flower earrings and then the flowers wrapped around the button too. Here's another Vogue pattern, this one in a size 16, and this is just for the jacket, I guess, but it's kind of a chic looking jacket. It's cut very wide and very short, which is kind of rare for the period. And I really like how they've styled it here with the hat and the kind of patterned wool. Very striking. Another Vogue pattern, this one is a rare special design, and it is marked with the copyright of 1956. I like this a lot. You've got kind of this fitted bodice with double darts on either sides. It looks like dolman sleeves, and then you've got a relatively full skirt, and you can make a little jacket to go with it too. So it's for a dress and a coat, and those are all the different views. Here we have a mail order pattern, probably from the early 40s, and it's in a size 20 for a 38-inch bust. This is a size 10 children's pattern for a cute fitted bodice with a rectangular skirt and puffed sleeves. Got another one from the 30s, actually maybe even the 40s. This one's in a size 1. Another tiny little dewberry pattern in a size 6 for overalls or a shawl or bloomers, or a puff sleeve dress, I guess. Lots of options. Here we have another 1930s butterick pattern. This one is faded to kind of a green color, but it feels like all the pieces might be there. I love this pattern. If this was in my size, I'd definitely keep it. It is called a tuck-in or over blouse. So it means you could tuck it into a skirt or wear it over top of the skirt, as you see here. And this has optional pin tuck details at the front. You can make it with a pointed collar or a kind of tied off collar. It has raglan sleeves. You can have balloon sleeves or these short sleeves with a really interesting inverted box pleat to provide volume across the shoulder. It actually looks like there's a more fitted sleeve option too. More kids patterns! So this is in a size 1 for 30-inch chest. It's just with a rounded yoke collar and then gathers extending down from there and little puffed sleeves. A gored dress with puffed sleeves in a size 4. This is a 1930s children's patterns in a size 10. So again, a woman who's more petite could potentially buy this and get away with making it. And I really like this pattern as well. You've got these circular sleeves and then it's fitted through tucks over the shoulder and then it falls relatively straight from there. And this feels factory folded. And here you can see those arm flares, how much volume they would provide with the rounded shape. This is a McCall's pattern in a size 8. It's a girl's dress and it's got a really interesting kind of pointed detail at the back, which leads into an inverted box pleat, which provides volume to the back. It's a size 6 dewberry blouse and jumper dress pattern. And now we get into some women's patterns once again. Thank gosh, it feels like it's been a long time. This is a dewberry pattern in a size 16 for a 34-inch bust. This feels like it might be factory folded. It feels just in impeccable condition and is copyrighted as being from 1940. Got this really cute kind of ruffled sleeve option with a ruffled placket down the front, or a less frilly option with long sleeves. And this looks like it has a pretty heavily gored skirt and is almost kind of shaped as a corset around the waist to really provide cinching action. And then it flares out over the bust with gathers. I don't think I'm going to keep this, but I'm a little bit tempted. Those ruffled sleeves are really winning me over. This one is for a 32-inch bust, and this one is also copyrighted 1940. So this is just kind of a simple shirt dress that buttons down the front and has optional welt pockets. I really like the lapel shape on this, and you've got those sleeves that are pretty iconic from the 1930s, which cinch in at the arm with an inverted box pleat. And I really, really like this collar design. It almost makes it look like a coat dress. This dewberry pattern is from 1941. It's also in a size 14, so it's for a 32-inch bust. This again kind of is shirt dress design, but it looks like it has hidden buttons. So the buttons would be underneath this placket instead of being a decorative part of the dress, and it is shaped at the front with pleats and shaped at the back with darts. These are two that actually caught my eye in the original listing and motivated me to contact this person. So I'm really excited to see these in person because they're sort of what started this all. So these are both Simplicity patterns from 1939, or sorry, this one's from 1940, this one's from 1939. They have very clean, almost pristine envelopes, and they're both late 1930s, early 40s designs. So this one has kind of a zigzag yoke, and then coming down from that, there are darts that provide the volume over the bust. And you've got this really cool kind of point cuff design, or fitted short sleeve cuff design that is created with tucks or box pleats. This feels like it might be factory folded, which would be awesome. And then this one I'm slightly less fond of, but still really like. You've got this pointed yoke detail, you've got a few different sleeve options. This one has little ruches to match the ruching at the front, and then the front itself is shaped with gathers above and below the bust. And it has a tie waist to really cinch it in, and it's made with 10 pieces. Here we have another coat pattern. This is a McCall's coat in a size 16 from the 50s. This has very large patch pockets, very large cuffs, a very large collar, and option for being double-breasted or single-breasted. This is a battered but very cute advanced pattern with a huge sailor style collar. It's double-breasted, and you can make it with a full or slim cut skirt. This is what I'm kind of tempted to keep, but I also feel like ironing that collar would be a huge pain. So maybe I'll pass it on. I guess it depends what condition it's in. The envelope itself is really worse for wear with this like gross tape that almost looks like it's turning moldy. So that's unpleasant, but the design itself is really, really cute. Here we have another McCall's pattern in a size 16. This is for a 1940s dress. The envelope is a little bit worse for wear, but hopefully the pattern itself is intact. And this is really interesting, way more interesting than I thought it was. I'm kind of tempted to keep this now. I feel like I'm gonna end up keeping a lot of these. But this has a yoke that's almost shaped like a collar would be, and then it has a little shawl collar that's cut in one with the bodice. So it's a very interesting effect, and that just buttons down the front and has a lightly gored skirt and is shaped with tucks at the waist. And you have flared cuff options for both the elbow length and the short sleeve sleeve version. This is a simplicity suit pattern from the 1940s. I really like the shaping of this. It's a very flattering, clever design, how it kind of tapers towards the waist to really cinch you in at that point. I especially love how they've illustrated it with the striped fabric here, so you really see the full effect of it taking you in at the waist and being really, really flattering. The only thing I don't love is that this doesn't have a color option. It just looks a little bit blank, but it's still a nice design, and it feels like it might be factory folded. This is a mail order pattern. I'm not sure what brand, but it will say somewhere. It's in a size 14, and it's just for a very fitted sheath dress for the 1950s. And again, you see that kind of dart that extends down into a pocket. We have some costume patterns here. So this is a children's cowboy costume, and it looks like it comes with the transfer design. This one is in a size 22, so that's for a size 2 to 4, as it says on the envelope. And this is for a fairy princess or flower costume. This pattern is labeled as being from 1952, and this has an Edwardian pattern, which is so funny. It looks almost like Mary Poppins-ish to me. And then it's got, I don't know, is that a clown pattern? I don't know. And then some sort of bustly pattern. And this is for a 32-inch bust, so size 14. And it feels like it might be factory folded. That's very interesting. I've never seen a costume pattern quite like that. Here we have a ladies pattern. I love this design. I don't think I would keep this in my collection because it's not my size, and I also don't really care for how strapless things look on me. But if I did, I would keep it. It feels factory folded. It's got a sweetheart bodice that you can also make with straps, and it's got ruching at the front to pull it down, and then it's got kind of a faux wrap skirt that ties in a bow at the waist. This is a butterick pattern in a size 12 for a 30-inch bust. You've got a cap sleeve option and a short sleeve option, and no collar, but it does have darts over the shoulder to create some amount of fit and structure, and then it ties at the waist with a bow, and again has a similar faux wrap skirt to the last one we saw. And this would be from the 1940s, whereas the previous one would be from the 50s. Another butterick pattern in a size 16. This is for a sheath dress. It has kick pleats at every seam, or inverted box pleats, which is really neat. I don't see that very often. It's fitted with quite a few darts through the bust, as well as its center seam, and then it's got an optional triangular cutout at the front, which is interesting as well. This butterick pattern is for a blouse with lots of pin tucks. It's in a size 16, and you can make it with short or long sleeves, and has a sweet little pointed collar. And it feels like it might be factory folded in there. And this one only has 6 pieces. Another butterick, this one from the 1930s. This has a rounded skirt with a side button closure, and then it's got a fitted jacket blousey top, which is shaped with ruching at either side seam. And then you've got ruching at the cuff too to kind of tie it all together. And this doesn't feel factory folded, so we'll see if it's complete or not. Another 1930s one, this one for pajamas or loungewear. Very elegant pajamas or loungewear. So this is in a size 16 for a 34-inch bust. So this has a jacket, a pants, and a bolero pattern, and it looks like you can make the pants and the shirt as one and have kind of a jumper beach pajama thing going on. I really love the dart that tapers into the pocket. I love the tied waist. I love the full pants. I just think it's really a very neat, very pretty design, but probably not what I'm going to keep. This is a McCall's pattern in a size 16. It's interesting. It's made with dolman sleeves, but you can also attach a longer sleeve to the dolman sleeve. So the dolman sleeve kind of serves as an arm side, which I saw in one other pattern today, but I've never seen before. And for 1940s standards, this has a relatively fitted skirt. It's probably the late 1940s. And then has gathering at the waist and the yoke, both at the front and the back. And it closes with a placket down the front. Another McCall's pattern in a size 16 for a 34-inch bust. I like this one a lot. I love this arm side detail. It's kind of dolman sleeve-esque, but the sleeves aren't part of the bodice because they're inserted into this really strange looking arm opening. I'd be really curious to follow that and see how it goes together, and since the envelope is quite deteriorated, perhaps I'll keep it. It's got a button front closure, which is my favorite sort of closure on vintage dresses because I get to use buttons for my stash and they're really easy to get on and off because I look like an idiot trying to get my man shoulders out of a dress with a side placket closure. Here we have a dewberry pattern from 1940, and this is in a size 12. It's the cutest romper, and again, since this is a size 12, a petite woman could potentially fit into it, and it would be a really cute kind of universal design regardless of your age. This one is in a size 10, and you have a hood option for this as well, which is really cute. I like this design a lot as well. I could see a petite woman ending up with this one as well. You've got this kind of double-breasted closure at the front, just so cute. Here are 2 New York patterns. This one is from the 40s based on the design with a square neckline that you can fill in with a yoke if you please. And this one's probably from the 1930s and it's in a size 6, and it looks like it's covered with saran wrap, which is weird. And this has an interesting kind of point at the front and then pocket flaps or I'm not sure if those are pocket flaps or kind of a peplum coming down from that. Here we have some more ladies patterns. This one's in a size 16 and I'm very tempted to keep this. It is from the 1930s. You have this draped collar at the front with either a V-neck or an optional band that takes it in at the neck, and then you just have a little slit at the front. You've got this pleated or tucked skirt that is kind of draped in the front and fitted in the back. And then you can make it with these full-length balloon sleeves, shorter puffed sleeves, or these, I think they're called trumpet sleeves. I can't remember what they're called. Kind of flouncy, floaty sleeves. And it looks very, very simple based on the pieces provided. I like that a lot. And it's McCall's pattern from the 30s, if I didn't say that. This is a size 10 pattern from Dewberry for a robe, copyright 1942. It looks very, very simple, but feels like it's been used before, so I'm not sure if all the pieces will be there. This is a McCall's pattern, and the side is folded over so we can't see what size it is. There we go, size 14. And this is the 1940s pattern with an interestingly shaped arm side. It has a yoke and then gathering coming down from that, and you have an optional collar. Oh, this is super cute. It's another one I'm tempted to keep, my goodness. So this is a butterick pattern with a yoke that you can either quilt or pin tuck. You've got a few really darling collar options, and that's just fitted with darts at the front and the chest and the back. And you've got long bishop sleeves with a quilted cuff as well, or a short sleeve option with a little decorative cuff. And this feels like it could be factory folded. Here's a mail order pattern in a size 14, and it's a very interesting design with kind of puffed balloon sleeves and then this yoke and inserted pieces at the sides of the hips. Very, very interesting in the way it's cut, and feels like it could be factory folded in there. These all look to be butterick patterns because these were kind of sorted by brand. So this is in a size 18 for a 36-inch bust. It is a sheath dress with dolman sleeves that kind of extend or are partially made up by a yoke. You can have optional little tabs coming down for the yoke, and then you can also mimic that detail in the skirt pocket. This is a children's coat pattern from the 1940s or 50s by Butterick. A skirt pattern for a 35-inch hip. I've never seen a skirt pattern where they list the hip measurement but not the waist, but since it is a size 14, I would assume it has a 28 or 27-inch waist. And this is probably late 40s, early 50s, and you've got a tiny little slit at the front and then patch pockets at both the front and the back. This is so cute. This is a Butterick kind of milkmaid blouse pattern with raglan sleeves from the late 40s, early 50s. Feels like it could be factory folded, and it looks very, very simple to construct. It's only 8 pieces. Here's a Butterick children's pattern in a size 2 that feels factory folded. You can make this with puffed sleeves or long sleeves, and you have a few different length options, and it feels factory folded. Another Butterick skirt pattern that feels like it could be factory folded, just a gourd pattern for 28-inch waist, and relatively simple, only 5 pieces. Here we have another 1920s children's pattern. This one is a child's and infant's dress, and it's in the size 1/2, so 6 months. And it looks like it might have embroidery transfers on it as well. Another Butterick pattern, this one from the late 30s, early 40s. This is a really interesting kind of wrap dress design, and you've got these really cute scalloped sleeves that have buttons to make them stand out. Scalloped button tabs at the front that can also flare out to form a lapel. Really interesting design. One I would probably keep if it was in my size, if I'm being honest. Speaking of my size, here's a Butterick pattern from the 50s in a size 16. This is again quite unique for a Butterick pattern. So it's got pleats at the front and tiny little button closures down the front. You've got these really wide, large pockets and gathering across the shoulder, and then a little shawl collar. Here's a Butterick pattern in a size 16 for a nightgown. I've never seen this Butterick envelope style before. That's kind of interesting. And it feels like it could be factory folded. So now I have to do a little bit more arranging, and then we'll go through the last of the patterns. There are some that are very old, and there are also some that are from the 1960s. All right, we're probably down to like 50 patterns, if not less. Right on top here, we have a pattern that is marked as being from 1919, but I was gonna guess the 1930s, and this in a size 7 for a child that is 7 years old, with a tiered ruffle skirt, and then ruffles around the neckline as well. This is an Anne Adams children's pattern. I didn't know they made children's patterns, but I guess that makes sense. And we actually have another one here. They're both in size 10, and I'm guessing these are 1950s designs, and they have little pocket details, circular skirts, and then button-down fronts. Here we have what looks to be an embroidery transfer only pattern. Here we have a simplicity pattern that's missing an envelope from the 1930s. You have a very heavily pleated skirt. Like, look at all of those pleats sewn down. I'll zoom you in so you can see. And then it's got ruching down the front and interesting notched collar, pleated puffed sleeves, and then it looks like you can make a jacket as well. So it's unfortunate that that is missing its envelope, but hopefully someone will still want it. I have never seen this style of simplicity envelope before. I've seen old McCall's patterns, but I've never seen simplicity patterns this old. And this is a boy's shirt pattern in size 5, and comparing it to a normal size pattern, that is how small it is. It's pretty tiny. This is a McCall's pattern in a size 2, and it is for a child's hat and coat. This is a buttered pattern from either the late 1920s or the early 1930s. It's in a very rare size 42 bust, and it feels factory folded, or at least neatly folded in there. It's supposed to have 8 pieces, and it's a very interesting design. You've got kind of this yoke detail at the top of the skirt, which falls down to something that's flared. You've got pin tags over the shoulder, 4 or 6 darts in the back to taper it in, and then you actually have a little kind of opening in the front that a neckerchief can come through. They describe it as a slip-over front closed at left underarm with attached 2-piece flared skirt, cap, or wrist-length sleeve with or without belt. Here's another butterick. This one has a much lighter envelope and is from a slightly later period. This is another 1930s design which has kind of a ring at the collar, which the fabric is gathered around, which creates and provides volume for the bust. It also has diagonal darts coming out of the waist to also provide room in the bust, and you can make this with long flared sleeves or short flared sleeves or long fitted sleeves, with or without a little collar. And the skirt is relatively fitted for the era, and it feels factory folded. Here's a butterick in a size 32. The envelope for this one's a little worse for wear, but it does feel like it could be in good shape. This is darling. Another one that if it was in my size, I'd definitely keep. You've got tucks down the front to provide volume there, and then it's fitted at the back. Quite the opposite of some 1950s and 40s designs. And then you've got gathering around the collar. You've got a few different color options, and also the option for a pocket. You can make it with long sleeves or short cuffed sleeves. Here's a 1950s/60s pattern by Simplicity. This is a size 16 for either a full pleated skirted dress or a kind of sheath dress that's fitted with a few gathers. And this has a wide shell neckline with an optional placket at the front. Here's a dewberry pattern. The date is missing, but I placed this in the early 1940s. It's a size 16, and it feels like it's in really good shape. I love how they've used super large buttons on the front of it. I think that's a cute little detail. This is a pictorial review pattern that has some gross looking gunk with hair coming out of it on it. Gonna try and have to get that off. And it's in a size large, which is a size 34. It's ladies 2-piece closed drawers. And I'm guessing that 34 is the waist measurement. So a small would have a 26-inch waist. Yeah, it says at the bottom corresponding with 26, 30, and 34-inch waist measurements. So this actually is for a 34-inch waist or up to a 34-inch waist, since it has a drawstring at the front. Actually, it doesn't even have a drawstring. It says elastic is inserted through the hem at the upper edge to hold in fullness. I've never seen a 1920s pattern calling for elastic before. That's super interesting. I might actually have to keep that one. This is what feels like a factory folded dewberry pattern. This is another one I'm going to be tempted to keep, but I really shouldn't. It's mostly the really puffed sleeves that are getting me here, and then the optional ruffle around this placket. It also has darts that fit it below the waist, so this would be quite flattering worn over top of the fitted skirt. And as I said, it feels factory folded, and you've got that super tiny cute dewberry envelope. This is a buttery pattern in a size 4 for a 23-inch chest. It's actually really cute. It's kind of like a romper meets jumpsuit pattern with an optional overskirt. Again, one that if it was in my size, I would probably keep. This is a more classic little girl's pattern for a jumper dress and blouse, or a kind of blouse and dress combination with puffed sleeves. This feels factory folded. This is a boys overall pattern and shirt pattern by Butterick for a 1-year-old. This is a Butterick dress pattern, which is really unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's in a size 12 for a 30-inch bust. It's got either dolman sleeves that are part of a yoke, or this ruched detail sleeve, which is also made out of a dolman sleeve. It just has that detail on top of it. And it's asymmetrical. So one side is fitted and the other side is kind of very wide and loose and then cinched in at the waist with a bow. I've never seen anything like that before. Very interesting. And it's got a seam down the front and notched collar, which is unique too. And I really like how they've used the striped fabric to create chevrons on the left design. Back to kids. This is a Butterick pattern in a, okay, the size is missing, but it says breast is 21, which I think is a size 1 or 2. It's just a pajama pattern of sorts. This is a men's pattern, and men's patterns for boxers actually tend to go for quite a bit. There was one in the previous lot as well. This one is for a waist that's 20 inches. If I hadn't purchased one of these before, I'd probably keep this and use it to make a pair of pajamas for myself. But I do already have a men's boxers pattern that I bought prior to purchasing either of these lots. So I don't need this and it'll be sold. And it feels factory folded, and I think this says uncut or mint. It's sort of hard to read the writing. Here we have a ladies' home journal pattern, probably from the early 40s. I have no idea. And it looks like it is just for various different collar designs. Here we have a buttock suit pattern from the early 50s, I'd say. And this is a very sleek, very sharp design. It has seams at the front that lead into openings for the pockets. It's a very slim cut skirt with a little slit at the front and a pleat at the back. The jacket has long line seams instead of ending at the waist. And it's just very flattering and nice. And it's made out of 17 pieces, which is pretty large by vintage pattern standards. This is listed as being from 1925. I'm assuming this is a pictorial review pattern based on the size of the envelope, and it is for a 34-inch bust, so it's a size 16. This is for a, it's not a cardigan, but it's like a cardigan made out of fabric. And I'm forgetting what they're called. This is a McCall's pattern in a size 16. This is another one I'm tempted to keep. It's called a Mrs. Sport shirt. It's labeled as being from 1954. You've got this really interesting kind of widely cut shirt that can be cinched at the waist. You've got a pocket over the front. You have darts coming out of the arm side, which I've never seen before. And then it looks like it has a front closure that slits down. I don't know, I just find that really interesting. I'm really curious to see what that would be like to make. So maybe that's what I'll keep. And it feels factory folded. Here we have a Vogue pattern in a size 14 for a jacket. And this is an earlier 1940s pattern. I can tell by the sleeker design, though it doesn't have a date printed on it. And you can make this with either, not decorative buttons, functional visible buttons, or a placket to hide the buttons. Speaking of coat patterns, oh no, I want to keep this one too because it comes with the skirt pattern. And look at the sleeves on that. The sleeves are so cool. I'm forgetting what that type of sleeve is called. That's basically where it's like widest at the wrist and then it cinches in with darts to create this very specific shape. And they're raglan sleeves, and then you've got this huge collar and this side button closing skirt. I think I'm going to keep this. Here we have a girl's princess housecoat or dress, which is very darling. And again, this is in a size 12, so someone who's more petite could make this for themselves, even if they're not 12 years old. And this has full-length seams, which is just really stunning. And I love how they've added optional trim around it too. Actually, here they have an illustration of a girl and her mother wearing the same dress. So I wonder if this was a companion pattern to a pattern that came in women's sizes as well. A very cute 1940s dress pattern by Simplicity. It's got a gathered skirt with a flat front. You can make this with a rounded collar or with no collar at all, and it buttons down the front, and you can make it with elbow length or short sleeves. This is a advanced pattern in a size 16. It feels factory folded. It's an interesting suit design that has kind of draped details over the hips, and then that draped detail is mimicked coming down from the shoulder seam to create that appearance around the neckline. This is a larger dewberry pattern, which is unfortunately missing its date because the bottom edge is so tattered. It's for a 38-inch bust, so that's in line with the size 20 pattern. And you've got a kind of wrap front to this with optional ruffles. So as I said before, ruffles are never optional, and it's described as being a lady's housecoat. This is a buttered pattern in size 8 from the 1930s. Feels factory folded. Very interesting piecing on this jumper. Again, one that if it's in my size, I'd probably keep. And then you can also make either a short or long sleeve blouse. Here's a size 15 buttered pattern in impeccable condition from the 1930s. Though this is a junior's size, so you see a junior's illustration, it's made for a 33-inch bust. So a woman could definitely make this and wear this. It's got a skirt with inverted box pleats and then an interesting kind of pointed yoke or a straight yoke, depending on which you prefer. It's also got a pleat for volume at the back and 2 different sleeve options. Speaking of juniors patterns and women's sizes, I have 2 more here, and they're both by Dewberry. So this is in a size 16, so it would be for a 34-inch bust. This is also from the 1930s. You've got a pleated circular skirt. You've got darts over the shoulders of the bodice. You can also make this with a little jacket, and it looks like it only has 1 sleeve option, and it feels like it might be factory folded. I know I said that this was from the 30s, but it actually says copyright 1940 on it. This one is in a size 12, so this would be for a 30-inch bust, I think. And it also says copyright 1940. And this has kind of an interesting yoke detail that goes over the bust, and then it has a basque waist or pointed waist. They have ruffles, and then the sleeves are actually pieced, so you could insert ruffles into the center seam. And it closes down the back, and I'm assuming with a side placket as well. Really, really darling design, and also feels like it could be factory folded. Here you have a 1930s design for a 34-inch bust, so that's a size 16. You can make this full length or short. You can make it with puffed sleeves, and only puffed sleeves apparently, and it closes down the front. Really nice, like classic 1940s style shirt dress. This has a little note in it that says collar missing, and I'm not surprised because it feels quite puffy, like it would be incomplete. This is a ladies and misses 2-piece suit dress in a size 16. And it's interesting the way it's done. It's got kind of gathers coming out of this yoke detail over the shoulder, and then that's mimicked on the peplum as well. And it's fitted in the back with darts. I think that is it for 1930s goodies, so let's just zoom through the final ones from the late 50s and the 60s. This one's actually probably from the 70s, and this is a Simplicity children's toddler pattern for a 6-month-old. This is a Mrs. pattern that feels like it might be factory folded. It's described as being slenderette, which only makes me think of Slender Man, and it's for a 36-inch bust. This is such a classic 1960s suit design. It just makes me think of Jackie O. You've got a kind of short jacket with no collar, and 2 buttons at the front, and a notched hemline, and then a fitted pencil skirt shaped with gathers. This will probably have a date on it, though I'm probably too lazy to find it right now. 1968. So this has a square neckline and a jacket, and it feels factory folded. This is a men's pajama pattern, probably from the 1940s. Another later 1960s pattern by Simplicity for a size 14. It's got those interesting diagonal darts shaping it at the waist, which I think is really flattering and interesting. And it looks like you can make a long or a short sleeve dress or a blouse and a skirt. So lots of options there. This I'd like if it was more fitted, but as it is, I don't think it would really flatter me. Definitely would look amazing on someone else though. This is kind of a suit or menswear inspired dress. In the 1960s, it's got that sort of mod silhouette, and you can make it with or without sleeves. It is double-breasted, and then you've got that kind of tuxedo style collar. This is a 1950s, 60s, I'm not sure, pattern from McCall's. You can make this with a long thigh-length jacket or a cropped shorter one. It has 2-piece sleeves, potentially dolman sleeves. They look like they're part of the bodice, and then the under portion isn't. So I don't really know what to call that. And this has a very fitted pencil skirt as well. This is from the 1970s. I actually really like this design. I might keep this. I think it's really cute. It's a very full bishop sleeve dress that's quite short, that is fitted with pleats. It's got a lapel and a collar, and it's fitted with darts in the front too. And it feels puffy, but it looks factory folded. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. This is your personal fitting pattern, perfect fit for patterns of marked new sizes. So this is a pattern you would construct to determine your pattern size, and then you would record your measurements, and it feels like it is factory folded. It's in a size 14. This is a buttered pattern from the 60s for a 36-inch bust. Feels factory folded. It looks like you can make a top that buttons down the back, a jacket, and a skirt from this. Oh, this is super cute. So this is again a buttered printed pattern in a size 16. This has a super wide, almost off the shoulder collar with a more modest straight neckline underneath it. And it's very rounded in the back, almost like a sailor collar. And you can make this with a fitted pleated skirt or a rectangular pleated skirt for maximum volume potential. This looks like it's missing its instructions and size information, which is unfortunate because it's a really cute 60s buttered pattern. It looks like you can make a vest out of this with a fitted skirt and also a crop jacket. This is another one I'm tempted to keep. It's just a really classic size 16 buttered pattern from the 1960s, I would say. The relatively fitted skirt and a slightly looser bodice. But what I really like about this are the sleeve options and the collar options. I just adore that really wide collar. I think it's so striking. And the fact that this has a seam over the shoulder so you can really get a nice adjustment through the shoulder and arms. I was going to say this 1970s, but it's actually labeled as being from 1966. And this is a McCall's printed pattern. Feels like it could be factory folded for a dress or a jacket. Actually, I guess it's a bodice or a skirt or a jacket. Something like that. This was definitely 1970s. This is a Vogue pattern with very little branding on it for either a dress or a blouse and a pair of pants. A McCall's pattern from the 60s, a Mrs. and Junior's 3-piece suit in a size 16 for a 36-inch bust. I like the illustration on this one a lot. It's just very happy and cheerful. This is from 1972, and it is a coat and a skirt pattern by McCall's. Another pattern from the 70s is in a size 14 for a 36-inch bust. I feel like measurements were much larger in the 70s. I'm not sure why. And then they got smaller again. Like I feel like pattern measurements now are smaller than they were in the 70s, which is weird. This is an interesting dress with a seam down the front and a few different trim options. This is a Mrs. Shallow Necked Miu Miu in a size 12 for a 32-inch bust. Feels factory folded, but there is this slash across the envelope, which is unfortunate. This is a buttered pattern, so it won't be dated, but I'm guessing this from the late 60s or the very early 70s. And it's kind of an interestingly shaped mod style dress with an optional mandarin collar. Here's a McCall's Mrs. suit pattern in size 16. This feels very poorly folded and worse for wear, so I would not be surprised if it's missing pieces. But it's just for a very sleek fitted jacket with lots of seams and darts. And then you've got sleeves that are cut in one with the bodice that have a seam down the shoulder. This is a butterick fully proportioned pattern, so that means you have various different pattern pieces depending on your proportions. There's a petite version, a normal version, and a tall version. And this feels factory folded, and it feels like a stuffed envelope. And it's stuffed because it has 3 different sizes of bodice patterns in there. It's a Vogue pattern that feels factory folded from the 60s. Easy to make blouses with few different color options and sleeve options. This is a 1950s pattern by Simplicity for a fitted dress with an optional cape. I love optional capes. I think they're great. You've got this striking asymmetrical side closure and then a pocket on one side as well that's incorporated into the dart on the skirt, which you guys know I love. It's described as, again, slenderette, creepy, misses and women's one-piece wrap around dress and cape. Here's a I don't know, is it 70s or 60s? 1967 Simplicity pattern for some mod style dresses with a few different yoke and sleeve and color options. This is a 1950s pattern buried in with the 60s and 70s, and it's by Simplicity. It's in a size 16. This is a very interesting wide notched collar, then kind of a yoke detail underneath it coming up with a decorative button on it. The skirt can either be fitted or made as partial circle skirt to provide lots of volume. And the collar is actually detachable, which is interesting. Here's a children's buttock pattern in a size 4. This feels incomplete. It just doesn't feel like there's very much tissue in there, which there should be with a skirt that full. And this has optional like decorative suspenders, as well as a few different color options too. This feels factory folded. It's a Simplicity pattern in a size 16 for some kind of sheath dresses from the 1960s. This is late 50s goodness from Simplicity in a size 16. You've got a placket front, a few different color options, or I guess it's the same color, but one version is shorter. You can make it with or without sleeves. Here's a super cute buttock pattern. It's very interesting how they decided to do the illustration where it's worn with tights. This is just a wrap circle skirt or partial circle skirt to provide lots of volume. It's only 2 pieces, so it's just a quick and easy wrap skirt. This is from the 70s, a Vogue pattern for a 36-inch bust. You can make a vest, a jacket, a skirt, and a pair of pants. So a whole bunch of different options in there. It's described as being a Mrs. suit and vest, and there are 18 pieces. And I'm really hoping it's factory folded because I don't want to count those. And then we just have a selection of buttock patterns. So this one is in a size 16. It's for a relatively fitted dress with very interesting front details. It looks like the darts are sewn from the exterior and they form into exterior tucks down the front of the skirt, which I've never seen before. It's described as a quick and easy pattern. It has dolman sleeves and it does feel factory folded. I'm actually tempted to keep this one. I like this a lot. It's a princess seamed sheath dress with optional sleeves, a large pointed collar, and then this placket detail cut in one with the front seam at the front that buttons closed. I really like that. I would definitely want to make it more fitted, and it might actually be too fitted through the hips for me, but I really like it. It looks very simple too. Here's a wrap dress pattern from Butterick, or a faux wrap dress pattern, and then you have a jacket that you can make as well that has similar details to the dress underneath it. Lastly, a late 1950s but 1960s style branding. Again, it's Butterick, so it won't say. Pattern for a ladies or Mrs. suit. So you can make a jacket, or you can make a full or a fitted skirt. So that is it. There weren't as many 1930s patterns in here as I'd hoped, and there were a lot more children's patterns than I'd hoped. But I still think it was a good haul, and I really enjoyed going through them, and I hope you enjoyed watching me go through them. If you're interested in buying any of these, I'll link the Etsy site where I will eventually be listing these down below if you're interested in that. I list and ship patterns every day, and I really enjoy the process of doing it. And if you'd like to see more videos like this one, though I don't plan on buying this sheer quantity or volume of patterns anytime soon, then let me know, because I can definitely film more of these when I do end up buying more patterns. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for coming along on this giant pattern haul adventure journey unboxing with me. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I will talk to all of you very soon.